Aren't we lucky to be living and working in the time that we are right now? Like, I just get up in the morning. I'm so grateful for just to be alive and working in this space right now because, yeah, I mean, we could have been in legal 70 years ago and, just grinding away. And I guess they found their own joy.
I don't know. Quill pens have been, lost. It's an art form.
Yeah, fair point. I would like a cool pen, but yeah, to be able to do what we are doing right now in this new era of artificial intelligence is really special, and we're very lucky.
I'm Hal Marcus.
And I'm Memme and Hal.
And this is Meeting of the Minds, the legal AI podcast from Evisort.
We interview lawyers, professors, and legal operations pioneers that are pushing the envelope.
Leaders using technology to drive great business outcomes and shape the future of the profession.
Well, Hal, really excited today for this conversation with Mike Haven. He just has such an interesting career path.
He really does. I enjoyed this interview so much. So, Mike, for those that don't know him, and I'm not sure who that would be, but he came into legal operations after quite some years being a partner at K&L Gates in Palo Alto. He went to NetApp as senior corporate counsel, focused on legal operations and litigation. Then he was at The Gap, and he got involved with Clock and became Clock president. And for the last 4 years, he's been the head of global legal operations at Intel. So yeah, not necessarily the typical path to legal operations.
Yeah, what interested me a lot about our conversation was just how he was looking for meaning in his career and how kind of the efficiency of legal operations and kind of making things work better really, really hit at that. And of course, we have the ever-present conversation about the ubiquity of the billable hour and other things in here today, too.
It will not die no matter what we do. We talked about generative AI. We talked about forward-looking technologies. He told us a bit about the organization he's involved in called Sense, which is great for us because most of what we talk about with our interviewees is nonsense. See what I did? I was waiting for that.
No, hilarious. And I mean, some of those forward-looking technologies, I got a preview, include blockchain, which I've always had a passion for. And I really loved his approach, though it still is early for this technology here. But the idea that you've got CLMs like Evisort who give you a lot of visibility to what's in your contracts. But if you really want to automate and get to smart contracts where contracts are executing themselves, you're going to need a source of truth outside of what's owned by particular organizations. And I think folks are going to be really interested when we get into that part of the conversation too.
Blockchain, we're kicking it like it's 2019. Don't go away, people. Keep listening, even though we're talking about blockchain. Really, it's interesting stuff. This is a terrific conversation with Mike. Happy to share it. Let's kick it off.
So welcome on the mic today, Mike.
Thanks, Meme. It's really great to be here.
Just to kick things off, you have a really unique background in going from a partner at a global law firm to then going to leading legal operations at some of the world's most recognizable companies like Intel and Gap. Could you talk a little bit about what motivated that transition in your career and what sparked your passion for legal operations?
It's a great question, and there are multiple reasons, but a couple of the big ones were I was a little bit uncomfortable in the practice of law with the notion that I had a responsibility to my firm to bill hours and a responsibility to my clients to be as efficient as possible. Of course, the clients always won and I was always as efficient as possible, but that didn't necessarily reward me at an outside law firm the way that I thought it should. And I thought that not that particular firm, but just generally the industry should be more focused on efficient legal work. And I didn't understand why the model didn't lend itself to that. And I wanted to do something about it. At the same time, I was interested in going in-house because I wanted to be closer to the business. I thought that the advice I provided was always a little bit attenuated from the actual execution of that advice as an outside lawyer. And I wanted to be a little bit closer to the actual execution of the decisions. Another reason was that I'm one of those people that just needs a lot of meaning in the work I do. It's really important to me that the time I spend, which is a lot doing work, is actually meaningful, not just for me and my family, but for the world. And I'm not saying that, I've changed the world, but it's definitely been my goal to make an impact. And I felt that this opportunity that came along to move in house and get involved in legal operations was a way to make a meaningful impact on, certainly on the legal industry. And because the legal industry is so important to the world, therefore on the world.
So in practice, yeah, I felt a great deal of tension between the billable hour and how I was serving my client, and felt very little recognition of that tension within the confines of the firm. And it never occurred to me to make a career out of that tension. So kudos to you for that.
Yeah, I didn't see it coming. You never really know where your career is going to take you. And this wasn't something that had been planned. It was more of an opportunity that came along. And it was really a leap of faith because at the time, legal operations wasn't really a thing. It was just getting started. And it was certainly was not an established field. And so this was a big risk. I had a good partnership. I'd worked my entire career to make partner in a AmLaw 100 firm, and I made it. And I had a good book of business, and things were going well. But just something called me to do this, and here I am. 12 years later or whatever it is, and it turns out that I'm really glad I did it.
And how did that opportunity arise? Was it an opportunity you created, or was there a recognized need?
Yeah, I met someone who was early in the profession and gave me an opportunity to not only work and learn about legal operations, but also manage litigation for NetApp. So I actually wore two hats in my first job out of the law firm, which was a great transition because I did litigation. That's what I was comfortable with. And I was able to do that and also learn from one of the early pioneers in the field. And that was really a blessing for me and an opportunity to go off and do what I've done since.
Yeah. To follow up on that, right now, especially with where technology is, I think a lot of young lawyers are looking at their careers and thinking it might not have been what they thought it would be when they entered law school, seeing the advent of these technologies. And like you said, back in the day, legal operations wasn't as established as a field, but it is today. What would you say to young lawyers looking at the field and maybe being interested in potentially taking their career early into legal operations? Any advice or thoughts for someone in that situation?
I think it's a smart path. If you look at the advancements in technology and how the industry is changing, a solid background in legal operations, in addition to a solid understanding of the law and how to think like a lawyer, more importantly, is going to be paramount for their success. And I think that if somebody is singularly focused on learning traditional constitutional law and traditional corporate law and all of that, and not also considering the universe of process and technology that is critical for success in both in-house and law firms, then they are not going to be well positioned for success. So we're starting to see law schools paying attention to these things, as you well know, Meme, and that's a beautiful thing because it's extremely important that they get that foundation.
I don't know that there's an ideal path, but what's a path that makes sense then for an attorney in the situation that you were just talking about? Junior associate, developing their skills in a firm, and then deciding, I'd like to make a move in house, but I'm not sure which path. I'm not sure if I want to be in one of these strictly legal roles and more of a legal operations role. What are some of the criteria they should be thinking about in terms of that career move?
What I think we're going to see, especially in the more sophisticated law firms, is training for younger lawyers on technology and how to leverage technology better in their legal service provision. And that is going to be extremely helpful. I'm starting right now to get calls from law firms saying, we want to work with you on creating generative AI solutions that we can leverage for your work. And we want your blessing, obviously, to train our model with some of your data and things like that. But what that tells me is that they're interested in it now and they realize the importance of it now. Not all firms, some are getting there though, and these are the leading edge firms, and more will come. And we're going to start to see a path where students in law schools are getting education on process and technology, legal process and technology. And then that education will translate into their first job at a law firm or in house or wherever they go, because it's going to be woven in to the infrastructure of the organization that they go to. And so that it'll be sort of they learn about it in school, then they get some training on it in their firm, and then, they'll be well positioned if they want to go whatever direction, whether that's an in-house job or to a technology company or whatever. There are so many paths in legal now that never used to exist. And that is cool. Suddenly it's no longer just you have to grind out 30 years of litigation. Like, if you don't want to do that, like, now you can go do a lot of different things in the industry and have a great, successful, impactful career. So,
I have to take you back on something you said earlier,
yeah.
because a more cynical voice, not that there's a trace of that in my voice, but some might theoretically say that the law firms are coming to you and others and to learn more about generative AI, to work out solutions that they can better serve their in-house counsel clients with, less out of we want to serve you better and more out of we don't want to get run over by this. We're deeply concerned at the implications of your perhaps needing us somewhat less or disrupting our billable hour model, et cetera, et cetera. What's your take on the impact of generative AI in that relationship between law firms and their clients?
They're in the business to make money, and they want to make as much money as they can, and that's okay, 'cause that's what they're supposed to want to do. But I think they're realizing now that in order to continue to be successful and make the profits that they're making, hopefully for them, they have to adopt technology. This is no longer optional. The tipping point has occurred, and they now realize that they have to work with it in order to continue to be successful. And what they're going to have to do, at least for their more demanding clients, is not only start leveraging technology better, including but not limited to generative AI, but showing their clients how that technology is benefiting their client, whether it's we're getting more bang for the buck or maybe we're spending less bucks. Whatever it is, they're going to need to use it and show us how they're using it to our benefit in order to keep our business. And I say that generally. I'm not speaking on behalf of Intel. I'm just saying, as an industry, I think that's what's happening. And the smart firms realize that. And the firms that do not adopt and do not figure it out rather quickly are going to lose business ultimately because of it, I think, is the bottom line. And they realize that.
hmm And I mean, you are talking about law firms waking up to the fact that they need to adopt these kinds of AI technologies. Of course, for years, you have been internally at legal departments, been evaluating and adopting AI technologies. Could you talk a little bit about how Intel has been using AI tools and looking to, in the future, adopt even more further these AI tools to drive business?
Yeah, well, we have a lot of AI solutions in place in our legal trade and government affairs organization. I don't want to start naming specific tools other than Evisort, which is one of the AI tools we're using for contracting. But we have AI workflow technology that we're using. We're exploring AI relative to our CLM in addition to what we're doing with Evisort. We use AI in our e-discovery processes. Obviously, generative AI is new, and like everyone else, we're really interested in it and exploring how best to leverage it safely. And we have been engaged in a very methodical approach to that that I'm I think is going to yield significant benefits a little bit later, but it's more of a establishing the foundation process right now. And as you know, we've banded together with some other organizations to go further faster in the advancement of our generative AI journey.
Is that the Sense organization that you're talking about?
The Sense Collective. Yeah, yeah.
The Sense Collective. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So it's facilitated by Factor, and it's a group of organizations that have banded together to share best practices, share experiments. We have a common platform that we're working together on where we can communicate and talk about our experiments. There's a sandbox in the platform itself where we can run experiments. So we have a lot of great forward thinking companies involved, and we'll probably end up with around a dozen or so companies in this collective. And the end result is going to be a recipe book of generative AI use cases and how to deploy them. So I'm looking forward to that. But really, right now, what's really, really important is not productivity gains at the moment. What we're more focused on is diffusing the capability and comfort of the technology throughout the organization so that people will adopt it when it is released, when it is launched, because you're not going to get the ROI if nobody uses it. So we're really focused on establishing that foundation that will maximize adoption at the end of the road.
Let's explore that a bit more because common theme and something we're always pursuing in this podcast with our interviews is getting beyond legal, taking all the value that legal can generate and delivering it in a pro-business way across the organization and really transforming that perception of the legal team as the folks you go to get a no, and instead the ones that are feeding proactively information that's going to help drive the business. So that sounds directly in line with what you're looking to do in being forward thinking about adoption. What are some of the practices you've identified that are really helpful on that front?
So right now, it's really about the infrastructure of the team and the program. So we have centralized a team that consists of one representative from every organization in legal, trade, and government affairs. And so every team basically has a representative on this AI team, this centralized AI team. And each of those representatives also has their own team in their organization that's focused on this, that experiments and reports to our team, the centralized team. So what we're doing is we're getting everybody involved is the bottom line. We're trying to get everybody involved early in the experiments, in the overall process for how we intake AI requests, AI solution requests, and how we get them approved so that everybody's in line that this is a safe solution to deploy. We're getting everybody involved so that they can own it too. And what we're finding, and I think I'm lucky because I don't think it's like this at every organization, but what I'm finding is a very high degree of enthusiasm at Intel in the legal, trade, and government affairs team for deploying AI solutions. And everybody seems to be excited about it. Of course, some people are more skeptical than others about how it's going to go. But I haven't heard anybody say we shouldn't even be like trying this. We shouldn't even be experimenting. This is a waste of time. I haven't heard anybody say that.
And if I could, that's a big change, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, because I've got enough gray hairs. I've seen these trends before of new technology that's really disruptive to some aspect of the legal practice. And yeah, usually you do have some sectors saying, yeah, we don't really want to go there. And then eventually they come around because they need to. And there are some pioneers that embrace it early. That doesn't seem to be the experience we're getting with generative AI in the past year, year and a half since it emerged. This is different somehow, isn't it?
It's the opposite. Everybody wants to play with this and figure out how it can assist their work. This thing, everybody's out with their own $20 a month GPT-4 subscription, figuring out how to make recipes by taking a picture of food and uploading it into GPT-4. And then all of a sudden it spits out. So, what you can do, I'm going off on a tangent, but you take the leftovers in your fridge,
Yeah.
you put them on the counter, take a picture of it, upload it into this application in GPT-4, and it'll tell you all the different meals you can make with those leftovers and the recipes for them. How cool is that? So people like are doing this in their personal lives and they want to bring it over to work and they're like, how can I make work better using this cool technology? And part of it might be because I work for a tech company and these are technically savvy people, mostly even lawyers, because they're working with very sophisticated technology. So it may be different in my org. I'm not saying it's like that everywhere, but it's definitely, I think, different.
I'm sure that helps, but I think you've put your finger on the bigger issue that there is something legal research online I was doing many years ago when we were still getting a ton of resistance on that. Well, this means a lot less time in the library, and we like that time in the library, and we like billing for that time in the library. And we're really familiar with how to use these books in a very, so many, plenty of resistance, but of course, eventually they come around. A big difference there was we didn't have a lot of people in law firms or in-house counsel going home and for $20 a month doing unlimited searching on Nexus.
Right.
That didn't really exist. That was a premium product. You didn't so they didn't get that comfortable that fast. But GPT being available the way that it is over the last year and a half, you've got everyone experimenting with it in so many different ways that their minds go to creative places about what they could be doing with it in their professional life. And I think there's a dramatically different aspect there.
Yeah, 100% right. And it's changing the game. People are really enthusiastic about this technology. So it that doesn't mean that change management's going to be easy. And I've sat in roundtables and told people what I just told you about the enthusiasm for this technology. And they've come back and said, well, like in my org, this change is really hard. And I get that. And I think it's going to be in my org as well, notwithstanding the enthusiasm, because you're still asking people to do things differently. But it's definitely different. There's a different vibe to it than anything I've ever seen. And we're at a tipping point.
Yeah. No, I feel like there's been a real mindset shift. I always say I've seen general counsel evaluate CLM for 8 months, and never in that 8 months did they ever upload a contract. They just watched a bunch of demos. We give them an hour with Chat GPT and they come back and say, hey, it's really good at drafting stuff, but it hallucinates when you try to do legal research, right? And I think that mindset shift of actually engaging with technologies and expecting instant results is really changing things. Do you have any advice for folks evaluating AI tools even outside, Chat GPT, but in the CLM or e-discovery billing space? Like how can you, because a lot of these tools, you sign up for multiple years. So you got to make sure you're making the right decision. How can you evaluate and make sure that you're getting something that will actually work for you and deliver value?
Yeah, if somebody has a tool that works and delivers value, they can't wait to show it to you for free. That's what I've seen. And so they will let you pilot it for free. I believe you guys do that, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're like, bring on your documents, because your tool works and does what it says it's supposed to do. Now, there's a lot of myth out there right now, and you have to dispel the myth from the reality. So it's about testing it and trying it and seeing what it can actually do versus what a business development person is telling you it can do.
And what are some of those myths?
Well, people say that they've infused AI into their pre-existing technology, and it's either it doesn't work or it's not really AI. So that's happening out there. I'm not like calling anybody specific out for it, but you have to make sure that what you're looking at is real. And that's super important right now because I was blown away how like generative AI became commercially available in November of 2022. And by spring or even earlier of the following year, everybody had it in their tools, and
Yeah.
I was a little suspicious. So I just need to make sure they're actually doing what it does, what they say it's going to do. So yesterday we had a demo from one of our existing providers of generative AI technology that they've infused into their tool. And we had a huge, a lot of people showed up to see it because, again, enthusiasm.
If I could, was that because, do you think it was because it's generative AI, quote unquote? I'm doing finger quotes for people that can't see me right now. Or is it, oh, and I'm getting confetti too from a filter, fun. Or is it, there's a solution that it was a value proposition of it, something, a problem that it's going to solve, and the fact that it was generative AI was secondary. I'm trying to understand, is it the hype that's driving the Gen AI, or is it what it's actually doing for you?
So what I've found is that the easiest way to get adoption or interest is when the generative AI is infused into a tool that they already use and already trust. Big name tool, like that, a brand that they trust too, right? Like these are people and these are brains and this is how brains work. And so, yes, the enthusiasm for generative AI, coupled with the fact that that generative AI solution is now part of a tool that they already use and already trust. It's just like, cool. Now, I don't have to go build a model, use RAG, and train data or train the model with data. I don't have to, that's all so confusing. This is just a tool that I already use, and then it has a box that I can type a prompt into, and it does work for me.
Yeah. Like when you're in a video meeting and suddenly you have confetti coming down. It's
Yeah.
just an added bonus.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think that's really, there's something to that. And that's why it was an attractive meeting for people to attend.
What came of that?
It was just cool addition to a tool that we already use that actually creates things now. So the generative AI creates things for you, and people are pretty excited about that. But it's still not perfect, There's people also see the kinks in it. I think my team understands though that it's just going to keep getting better and very rapidly. So, getting comfortable with it now, getting capable with it now is what's most important. And then this technology a year from now is going to be off the charts. I mean, it's just going to keep getting better. And then when it's more accurate and it's even better, the team will be comfortable with it. They'll know how to use it. They'll be there. And that's the idea.
Yeah. Well, speaking of a year from now and that kind of future looking, that's why I love our conversations, which is just kind of looking at what is coming and looking what is the future. I've been fascinated at a lot of your ideas, and when you think about how blockchain and, smart contracting, which has been on the horizon for what it seems like a long time, much in the way AI was for a while up until now. And it's been something that's been talked about, but I've been really interested in your thinking about it in ways that could make it more real and potentially useful down the line in corporations. And would love to pick your brain a little bit here on how blockchain technologies might be able to be incorporated usefully within legal departments, especially around contract.
Yeah. So I recall, I think it was 2017. It was either at ILTA or Clock in Vegas that year. I can't recall, but there was a big blockchain reveal. And it was like, okay, blockchain and legal is here. And I was like, what is this? I didn't understand it. And once I finally wrapped my head around what the technology was, I didn't understand why it would be needed in legal. And so finally, I started to get that if you place a hashtag identifier on a document and place that identifier in sequence in a digital blockchain ledger, there are advantages to that because it's immutable and you know that that document is what it is. And that's important, but I saw that as a nice to have, but not necessarily a must have, given that we have a single source of truth, CLM, where internally we can find the actual agreements quite easily because they're organized in a repository. So it would be nice to have that security and that trust, and just for very, very important agreements, knowing that this is the source of truth. But it was never for me a must have. Now that's changed with the advancements in AI, because what I can see now is a future where contracts speak with each other cross organizationally. And you need a single source of truth, not just internally for your own organization, but cross organizationally, so that two companies, two counterparties, can reference the same agreement from a third party single source of truth. And more importantly, their AI can reference it and know exactly what the agreement is and what the terms are, and potentially, based on inputs from the parties, self execute or manage certain terms or obligations in the agreement without human intervention. And that is a vision that has become much more possible and real with the advancements in AI coupled with blockchain technology.
Yeah, I love that because when so many people hear smart contracts, they think of Ethereum, they think of, and a lot of that's on the kind of financial kind of money side. But it seems like the issue that you're solving here is that, to your point, yeah, a CLM, like an Eversort, really helps you know what's in your contracts. And we use the AI to structure that data, right? But when you want to engage with another counterparty at a automated level, they don't want to rely on what's in your CLM, and you don't want to rely on what's in their CLM. You need a trusted third party that exists outside of yourselves that's also digital in nature, so AI can run these processes automatically.
You said it better than I did. And with immutable blockchain, a digital ledger reference number, that AI cannot mistake what the actual contract is. And that is what's really important about it.
This is an area I find fascinating because it opens up the potential for a future where there isn't your representation of our agreement, our representation of our agreement, and we have an evidentiary issue to ensure that they're the same. And we rely on a signature, on a representation of a page, even though it's all electronic. It still looks like pages. There's still a squiggly line on a page, all of that to go with it. It's getting into a future where there is a different way of documenting the meeting of the minds.
Correct. Yeah.
And, that opens up all sorts of new possibilities. There's a lot of artifice in legal language, and that's why we have our AI to interpret that language and determine what it really means, how it applies, summarize it for people in non-legal roles so that they have a quick reference about how does this discount work? What is the limitation of our liability? Even within legal, those TLDRs are very helpful, right? Rather than reading through 3 paragraphs, you have a quick summary. It's this, it's that, it's something else, and it's capped here. Okay, good, I know. The more we can get to those simple points as what you've agreed upon, rather than we've agreed upon some flowery language, which boils down to these handful of points. If you could agree on the points and have those documented and logged somewhere in a shared way, there's a lot less to dispute about, isn't there?
Right. Yeah.
So I guess my question for you after all that is, why are you trying to put litigators out of business?
Yeah. I don't think anybody wants litigation. It's something that we need less of in society, in my view. And I'm a former litigator. So,
You know, zooming out a little bit, you led Clock and were president of Clock, which, for folks who don't know, and everyone should, is the foremost organization around legal operations. And you led it during an era of intense change and innovation in our industry. I'd just love to hear a little bit about what it was like, one, getting that global view of legal operations, because so much of what, I think even we do and when we talk to folks about is focused on the United States. But of course, this is a global phenomenon, legal operations and legal innovation that's happening in these different regions across the world at different paces. But then also just what it looked like to see this revolution in thinking around AI from the perspective of seeing an industry vendors looking at adopting into their technologies? Just what was it like and what did it look like to you?
It was and is quite a ride. I'm still on the board, but my term as president ended at the end of 2023, and I was happy to pass the baton over to Jen McCarran, who's leading the org now. But that 2.5 years I had as president was extremely eye opening. A lot changed, as you pointed out, during that time. When I became president, and we were right in the middle of the global pandemic, and we were trying to figure out how we were going to survive as an organization because a big chunk of our revenue came at the time from events, live events, and so we had to pivot to virtual events, and like everybody did, and we had to figure that out. But we were able to ride out that storm financially and not only survive but grow significantly, and we grew a lot in terms of membership and also global reach. And that was one of the best things I observed in my term as president was watching the proliferation of legal operations throughout the world. We expanded significantly in a lot of different countries. I had people come to clock from Ukraine in the middle of their war. They got out of their country so that they could come to CGI in Vegas. And that was just, and they stood up and got a round of applause at the event. And that was a moment for me because what it showed was that, like, we're really all over the world now, not just clock, but legal operations, like I use them synonymously because, legal operations has grown with clock and clock has grown with legal operations. It's just two peas in a pod. But it was really interesting to see, like, every all of the different global regions building interest and reaching out and saying, how can we start a local community here? We have a big local community that just joined in Brazil. So lots of cool things happening around the world. And again, we started by coming out of the pandemic, and then all of a sudden ChatGPT was released in November of 2022. And so that it was the pandemic and then it was AI. And those were the two big things that sort of happened during my term. But with respect to AI, again, it is a craze like we've never seen before, and for good reason. It's not hype. This is not, as I said on stage at CGI last year, this is not one of those waves that's going to rise and recede. This is actually something that's going to continue to rise and rise and rise and advance, and we need to get a hold of it.
And I remember in those opening remarks, you made a real point about guiding toward responsible, ethical adoption.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
We could talk for hours just on that subject. That's a really loaded question. But what it means to me is not allowing the AI to take control of our privacy, of our security, of our personal data. We have to be in control of AI. It's like taking your dog for a walk. You see the people walking around the neighborhood who don't have their dog on a leash. They let it run rampant. They don't clean up after it. It's a mess. And then there are the responsible people who walk their dog with a leash and clean up after it and do the right things. We need to be that neighbor that walks the dog on the leash. We need to make sure that we are in control of the AI rather than letting it control us, and that we are not letting it make a mess that can't be cleaned up or isn't cleaned up. That was probably a terrible analogy. But anyway.
We're going to have all sorts of animal rights organizations protesting us. The emails will begin now. But there's one aspect of that I'd like to explore a bit more, because some of the points of the mess, I'll extend this analogy as far as we possibly can. Some of the mess being left behind, data privacy implications, right? Misinformation, things being used to loss of IP, all sorts of problems like that. But there's another area of control that I think sometimes gets overlooked. And it's about, can you get the AI to do what you want it to do? Because a lot of times you're given trained models and it's here it is. These are all the things it will do. how important is it to be able to customize and get the responses you need, get the answer to the questions you need? In the contracts world, get the extractions or the generated answers that you specifically need, not the ones it was just pre-trained for, because things change. New strategic initiatives in the organization, new regulations, suddenly have new questions.
Yeah.
How important is that aspect?
I think it's very important. I think it's everything, because otherwise, what are you using it for? Right? It has to be personalized or customized to your organization. Now, you could be doing legal research, and that applies to everybody, right? The case law is the case law. But if you're talking about, your own data or an intake system for your own frequently asked questions, that has to be customized, because your frequently asked questions are not the same as the next person's necessarily.
One thing we like to do with folks at the end of some of these conversations is just ask them a question and get a one-word response,
Okay.
where you kind of sum it all up. And so,
And then we shame them when they can't do it in one word.
Exactly. But I guess for you, I would love to just have it be the future of legal technology is blank. What would you say to that?
Let the record reflect the answer was sigh.
I'm thinking about so many words. The future of legal technology is, the word that keeps coming to mind is exciting, but that's terribly boring. I'm just really excited.
By definition, exciting is not terribly boring.
Yeah.
Yeah. So exciting. I'm really excited about it. Yeah. Aren't we lucky to be living and working in the time that we are right now? Like, I just get up in the morning. I'm so grateful for just to be alive and working in this space right now, because, yeah, I mean, we could have been in legal 70 years ago and, just grinding away. And I guess they found their own joy.
I don't know. Quill pens have been, lost. It's an art form.
Yeah, fair point. I would like a cool pen, but yeah, to be able to do what we are doing right now in this new era of artificial intelligence is really special, and we're very lucky.
I think there's a lot to that. We are at a point of, anyone can look at the, different perspectives at certain periods in history, but I think it's pretty safe to say where we're at right now. There's a ton of attention around legal operations, great recognition for it, budget for it, challenge sometimes, but certainly there is budget for it. There's a recognition of the value of it, and yet it's not so mature that it's calcified, and there's a lot of opportunity for creativity. Would you agree?
100%. Yeah. It will become more mature, more standardized, and it needs to over time. But we're still in the early days, very much so.
So with that in mind, what would be one piece of advice? And I'm saying one because you probably have 20 for people entering this career.
Have a growth mindset. You cannot come into legal operations with all of the background and knowledge that you need for the role. It's a multifaceted role that requires knowledge in areas including legal, finance, technology, HR, sourcing. Like, there's a zillion areas you need to understand. Don't let that overwhelm you. Just come in with a growth mindset. You probably have a couple of those things in your foundation already. Leverage those and learn the others, and have a great time doing it, because no 2 days are the same. It's a great way to make a living.
Well, Mike Avon, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really great talking with you, and yeah, we really enjoy it and really appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Meeting of the Minds, the Legal AI podcast, is brought to you by Eversort. To learn more about Eversort and how we can help you contract better with AI, visit Eversort, EVISORT.com.
You can find Meeting of the Minds on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to click subscribe so you won't miss future episodes.
On behalf of everyone here at Eversort, thanks for tuning in.